substantially later, but there may be some element of it. Since right now, what we're trying to deal with is with the calendar, I suggest, Mr. Chair, is that you recruit one member of the commission who's more interested in this. And the two of you can look more carefully at his letter. Unfortunately, the balance of us haven't really seen the letter, so we can't really comment on it. But if there were two of you that could then look more carefully at the letter and research what you can, then I'm gonna be perfectly comfortable in you deciding whether or not you want to bring it back to the committee in full, whether you feel that it's necessary, or whether in fact we can respond by simply providing a letter. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the appropriate route. But I think delegating that responsibility to you with further research is the logical way to go.
Well, my initial thought was, since we do have an engineer on our commission, Commissioner and you have given some good input for the Alamo Pintado Bridge as far as like the railing, because I first looked at that and I was thinking, well, maybe we'd like a new bridge to have the same railing as the older bridge, just to show the historic nature of it. But that's something, you know, I was thinking that maybe you might be interested in working on that.
Well, funny you should say that. I do have an interest in the county's bridges, and I would be willing to look at this and maybe consult with colleagues on this matter. But the first question is it in our jurisdiction? And secondly, you know, what exactly is the time of the bridge? And do they have any historical information on it? I'd like to get that information up front.
Okay, well, what I can do is we can make sure the letter, well, I'll get the letter to you. Well, let's.
Yes, the letter, send a letter.
We'll have me as chair and Commissioner Witosh. We will get together. And if we decide we want him to come and do a report at our September meeting, we can do that. Or we can decide that whatever we decide, we'll come back to the commission.
All right.
Okay.
I drive over that bridge like all the time. It's a really cool bridge. And those photos don't really do it justice. If you look at it from the top, it almost looks like a WPA type of bridge.
To me, it looked in the 3948.
Yeah,
To me personally, but
I believe it is outside the city limits of Lompoc. I think that because I know there have been things about trying to extend the city limits of Lompoc, and that's been rejected. So I believe like even what we call the Blue Whale, their old Grefco plant is outside the city limits of Lompoc. Pretty certain.
So I drive to Lompoc probably less frequently than you do, but where is that bridge exactly?
So as you're going down 246, right before you get into, like there's the county yard right there, and after River Park or whatever they call that park now, it's right there before.
Is this before or after the roundabout?
After the roundabout, right before the city limits.
Just before, okay.
Yeah, right over the river, which actually has water in it.
All right, yeah. Okay, thank you.
okay, I think we have a path forward on this, so we will work on that. Thank you, Commissioner Witosh, for signing up for this. Okay, now on our project discussion, which is not an agenda item, I just want to remind everybody that we have Rancho San Carlos as an as-built development plan for discussion today. The County Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission will review and provide comments on an as-built development plan. The property is a 5.03 acre parcel shown as assessor's parcel number 155070002, located at 2500 East Valley Road in Montecito area. This project, as you probably know, came up at the last month's meeting from one of our commissioners, concerned that that neighbors have seen development going on at this project. And so I contacted the planner, which is Soren Kringle. And is he online right now?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm online.
Great, thank you. And so I talked to Soren about to come and do an update and about this project. And it's not the whole estate. It is the one parcel which includes the main house. And Mr. Kringle was very good in sending all the materials to us. So we have all the materials which you got by mail or it's in the box for you to look at. So as you know, this project did bypass us and went directly to the next step. And Mr. Kringle will probably do a quick explanation how this happened, but what happened in general is that the property owners do not want the property to become a historic landmark. And so because of their not wanting it, it did not come to us. And now, as you know, in our agenda today, we have an agenda item to discuss this. So this item, I don't want to gang up on the planner, why it bypassed this stuff, but it's, he's going to do a presentation about the project, that we can have input, and then we can decide what we want to do after the input. But let's do our discussion about why it did not come to us for later on in today's agenda, which is an agendized item. Okay? Yeah.
All fair enough. But I have kind of a procedural question.
Okay.
How is it that this is not an agenda item? I don't know, it's neither fish nor fowl here.
The
How did
agenda
that
item
happen?
is because we'd have to bring in the applicants, and since it's already bypassed us, this is more of an informational item. We're not
Not actually.
technically reviewing this, we're looking at the item for comments. But since it technically is not supposed to come to us, planning department has brought it back to us so that we can look at it, tell us what happened, and that's why we have a planner here today that's going to go over the steps and what they're planning to do on this project, which we received.
And what are what's the expectation of the county staff? from
Their
this
expectation is giving
exercise?
us a presentation. And we can give
What
some
does that
comments.
get anybody? I mean,
It's,
I've
it gives
never
us a
seen a
chance.
project not on the agenda.
I know,
at
this
any
is,
discussion.
it's idea, it's very,
I'm not getting on your case, I'm just
right,
trying to, in a friendly way, ask what in the hell are we?
okay.
are
When we
doing?
talk on our agendized item, we can go into more detail, which Commissioner Nye, you also kind of know, they have a process in the future that they want to explain to us how they're going to do the items. And this actually might be one of the ways they're going to do it in the future, is if it bypasses us because the owner doesn't want it to become a historic landmark, we can pull it and have them come and give us a presentation like they're doing today. And then we can and then if we decide, I mean, I'm going too far, but so right now we're going to listen to the presentation about Rancho San Carlos from the planner, let him, and he can give us the process, how it got to where it is now and why we're doing it, but we can ask him questions about this project. Okay, so I think we should move on
I'll
to
stop.
turn over to the
Just-
planner.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Duncan has something
Okay.
to say.
Yeah, I'm equally confused as Commissioner Nye, because it was my understanding that we specifically had asked that Rancho San Carlos be brought back to us because we had formally considered designating parts of it as landmarks. And now we see that there's major development going on the site. And that we could bring back this property that we have gathered lots of information about. Many historical reports have now been written about it. This is being the fourth one, which we're looking at right now. And that was my understanding that we were going to consider parts of Rancho San Carlos for a place of historic merit designation. And that's what our discussion is going to be about. So what I'm wondering about is there any place on this agenda where we can have that discussion?
I would say today is to listen to the report. If we feel that the house that we're looking at today, because we're basically looking at the house or the gardens are the two items we're looking at, is eligible, which the report says it is, we can decide to re-agendize it as working forward as a historic landmark or place of merit and re-agendize it then. At the end of this, if a commissioner thinks that's the way to go, we can ask to have an agendized in the future about making it a historic landmark or a place of historic merit. But today it's listening to the project, what they proposed, what they have done, because it's already going through the planning stages, and I'm not sure what has been done yet. And that's why we have a planner waiting to speak to us. And I think we should move on and listen to the planner. So I'm going to turn this over. Does that answer your question? Okay. So I want to turn this over to Soren Kringle, the planner for Rancho San Carlos. And thank you for being here today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Chair Coffin-Gray. I had expected maybe a representative from the applicant team to give a more formal presentation, but I will give you guys an overview of the plans that were provided. And then again, just to touch on what Chair Coffin-Gray was talking about in regards to why this wasn't formally agendized. The planning department is in a little bit of an interesting position because as is known, like this isn't a formally, it's not a historic landmark, even though I know it was discussed in 2018 under different ownership. It wasn't ever, as you know, it wasn't ever established as a historic landmark. And because the owners did not want it to be, eligible or put up for nomination, it was a tough position as a planner to, do we go against the owner, what their wishes are? And that ended up being the reason why it wasn't formally agendized. So this definitely is an opportunity for you guys to look at the plans and make a decision on whether or not you, feel like you want to nominate it, or if you. I think that's what this discussion item should be about. Jonathan, are you able to pull up? I think the landscape plans are maybe what we should look at first. If not, I can also share my screen.
Yeah, I can pull them up here, or if you think it would be easier for you to.
It might be easier for me to just share my screen.
Absolutely. Just give me 1 second. I'll give you co-hosts.
Okay.
Okay, you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, 1 second. Is everyone able to see this? The landscape plans?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, so we have it's over almost 30,000 square foot single family dwelling from the 1930s. There's no like additions being done to the residence. It's all the replacement of doors and windows, and we can look at those later on the architectural plans. The main work that's being done is the landscaping around the property. And this is addressed in the historic report done by Post and Hazeltine that was also provided to you. The work to the south of the house is for a new pathway that leads around to some other gardens on the east. The center courtyard is having the addition of some new trees and landscaping, and then the bulk of the landscaping is for these gardens to the north here. They wanted to have a yard that they could walk out onto. This is designed to be a family home for multiple generations, so they just want to have an area that people could access easily, and then another garden farther to the north with new landscaping. There's some grading being done up here as well, and another pathway to the north. And let me just pull up the architectural plans as well that we can take a look at. And while this is pulling up, I'll just let you know where we're at in the process. This recently received, this recently went to MBAR, and they had, positive comments from MBAR, and the next step would be going to the Planning Commission, and that date has not been set yet. There's just a few items that we're still wrapping up from a planning perspective before it would go to the Planning Commission. So now we have the architectural plans, and we'll just go through this sheet by sheet. I think the elevations are probably the most informative.
Is this primarily an interior remodeling project? or
Yeah.
do they have additions? to the-
There's
the,
no additions. It's all a replacement of doors and windows, and there's an existing interior remodel permit that's already, so the interior is already being remodeled under a building permit that didn't require a planning permit. This is essentially what this had to come in for, was because it's over 20,000 square feet. In order for them to do, what they needed to do as far as the door and windows replacement, they had to get a development plan versus just like a land use permit. And in addition to the development, to the doors and windows is the landscaping, which really the landscaping is like the biggest thing from a planning perspective on this project. Like the doors and the windows, as long as they comply with their policies, not a big deal. So the doors and the windows and then landscaping is what this is in for. So here we go.
Exterior doors and windows are definitely considered exterior changes. And there are numerous, this is Commissioner and I, there are numerous changes to exterior items.
Certainly, yeah.
That should be uppermost on the planner's mind.
Exactly. That's the reason it had to come in for a development plan. If it was just for an interior remodel, it wouldn't have required planning permits. It's the exterior modifications and the landscape plans that are requiring the development plan. Okay, so we have, so here's the existing building elevations. And if you want to go just individually, like what the door changes are, I'm not sure how best it would be to go through this, or if you guys, if it was, if you had a chance to look at this as well, but and if there's anything that caught your eye, we could look at it together.
This is Chair Kaufman Gray. I would say I know there's some new doors being done. I would point those out.
Okay.
I know most of the window sills and stuff are being redone, but when I went through the report, there was quite a few doors. If you could just point those out, just between existing and proposed.
Definitely. So up here we have, these are existing windows that are going to be turned into doors. And then we see that kind of throughout the house. A lot of windows to door just to allow access to areas that weren't readily accessible before. And then the big change, I think, as well, is there's a garage that they're condensing the amount of lessening the number of garage door bays from 5 to 3, and we can look at that as well. Southern building elevation. So we have a good example of what's proposed.
You're moving the drawing around a little pretty quickly, and I'm not able to compare between the existing and the proposed on each elevation that you're showing. So maybe we can come back to that.
Okay, certainly, yeah.
Mr. Chair.
I can just wait if you want to let me know when it is appropriate to move to the next elevation.
I have a request.
Sure.
While we're on this drawing, could you please zoom in on the existing window that is not being changed in the middle of the building, the gable end. Could we look at that up close? Yeah. And could you tell me what exactly we're looking at?
It's,
I see mullions and lights and so forth, and that is a door.
yes, there's a door.
Is it wood or steel?
On my site visit out, I believe it was wood, but I'd have to double check on the building schedule or on the door schedule.
Well, those are very small lights, very divided into very small lights, and there's a little panel at the bottom. And I'm wondering if that's, you know, a wooden panel or if this is a steel, if these are steel doors or not. You know, that's a question, doesn't have to be answered at the moment, but eventually.
Yeah. Again, I feel like if a more thorough presentation could have been provided by the applicant team, but yeah, I'll do my best to
Okay.
answer all these questions.
And also the window to the right. At the top of the stair, there's a little porch. And what exactly are we looking at there? It seems rather modern.
Yeah, work has been done on this house since Reginald Johnson originally it was originally designed. So there were modern additions, and I believe this is one of those that you could just, there's a few throughout the house. And so that this certainly could have been one of them.
Well, then moving to the door to the right, which is in the porch area there, those two doors, those are not being changed, it looks like. Those are existing doors and they
Correct.
look like the original doors.
Correct. I don't want to speak. I believe those are original Reginald Johnson doors. I'd like the historian. I would rather have the historian, you know, confirm that, but it is not being changed as part of this project.
Yeah. So that begs the question then about the historian and just exactly what is there originally, what was changed from the original, and what is now being proposed in connection with how does that relate to the original. So these are all value questions that are also informational questions.
Mr. Chairman, on the sheet,
Go ahead.
if you can slide it up so we can see on the bottom. I believe this is a place where, yes, on the bottom, on the left there, they're replacing a door on the right. They're replacing a door here, and in this case, there's a transom. And I didn't see any other transoms, so that was one thing, and it was the historian didn't bother to point that out. So I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I don't know if I can speak on that. It might be a better question for the historian at a certain point. But I don't have I don't know if I can speak on that one, unfortunately.
Could you slide up so we can see what that is now today, existing? What's the existing?
This is it's a window,
The window that's being made into a door.
correct?
Okay. Good. And one more question, there's a little bay window there with a kind of a scalloped roof in that, in the right hand, in the right there. The upper right, that's that one right there, yes. No, you're right there. What is that? That's an existing element?
This window, correct? This window right here.
With the roof, the bay window, down below. Just below that.
Oh, this one right here.
Is that a porch or a bay window?
I believe that is a window. It's this window here.
So what is that little canopy that there? I mean, what
To
is it?
To the right here,
No,
or
the canopy,
you're referring to this?
yeah, there. What's in the gray space there? It seems like there's a blank.
I believe this was a doorway, or they would have shown the doorway. And this could just be just a protruding
small.
element of the house.
This says proposed. What's the existing?
The existing is this is the existing as well.
It's a blank, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to what that's all about, because the canopy motif is repeated throughout the proposed changes.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Commissioner Duncan.
yeah, Mr. Kringle was gonna go on, I think, to the garage, because those are obviously fairly substantial changes.
Right.
I can go straight to the garage, or I can continue just going through the elevations. It's up to you.
Why don't you quickly go through the elevations?
Okay.
We'll go quickly and then go to the garage, and it sounds like there's more comments on the garage.
Certainly. This is within the courtyard, 2 doors.
There are a lot of places where they've taken these panel doors. It looks like the doors originally were planned with privacy in mind, and they've been now replaced with doors with lights. So that there will be more interior views and light coming from the courtyard.
And then here's the courtyard north elevation, this door being changed to the windows as well. I'm going to continue on to the next slide unless anyone wants to take a closer look at the door changes.
Good.
So here we have the garage. And yeah, there's 5 bays and they are reducing it to 3 bays. And the reason being is currently the bays are too narrow to accommodate modern day cars. And that is the reason that it is, they're widening the garage door bays. And I can go back to the existing as well.
Any commissioner comments on this?
The comments I had actually had to do with the historian's
questions, I guess I would
analysis.
say.
And since the historian isn't here to answer the questions, I'll just have to remain perhaps a little confused as to what his analysis was. Because there's one point where he has a contradiction.
Who is the historian?
Post Hazeltine did the phase 1, phase 2.
Mr. Chair, my comment is, the proposed garage doors, are very modern looking and don't fit. Those very wide doors on either side don't make any sense on the building from that era. And there ought to be a way to enlarge a couple doors without going to the extreme that they're planning.
My question would be, I'm not an engineer, but the support of that beam. I mean, it looks like they took the easy way out, just to take out the 2 and then kept the 2 supports in the middle. You think it would have been better if it was more evenly spaced, but then I don't know how that area is designed as far as for support.
I think it's a matter of trying to balance the different aspects, but I agree with Commissioner Nye in terms of the appearance now. Those extra large bays are just some larger than anything you would see in a historical building. They obviously rely on steel. But I think that the approach was we'll take out the minimum amount of fabric. But obviously you'd be, if we were just looking at something that would be most compatible, I would think having 4 bays where each of them were a little bit larger and it could still be symmetrical would result in something that would appear more historic.
How wide are the bays now?
This is back to existing. I just wanted to refresh your guys' view of it. I go back to the proposed.
So, are they 8 feet clear, or is it 8'6", or is it 6'6" clear? What's the clear width of the bay now?
I can measure that for you.
Would be on the plans, maybe.
I don't know if they're right on the plans, but I can,
Withholding vital information.
This elevation, you can see where the additional chimney that is put on the end there. And that's one of the changes they're making also. And at one point in the analysis, the historian says that, well, this isn't a significant amount of material. But in another part, he says this is a significant amount of fabric that's being removed. So that was what I would have asked him to clarify.
Looks to me like it's an 8 foot. I think you're 7'10.5" there is a little shy of the brick. If you move it to the brick, there you go. 8 foot. Well, that's the height and the width is enough to get most modern vehicles, unless you're trying to get a double wide or a boat in there. Then it might be there with a boat on a trailer. That might be a problem, but that's, I'm gonna agree with Ron and Lansing. I think that, pulling out those pilasters changes the whole scale of that elevation. Does not look appropriate.
Okay, any other commissioner comments on this before we move on? Because I know this is just comments. We can't really do a whole lot of discussion, but
Yeah.
okay. So are these the main changes to the now we have the gardens to look at.
the gardens are addressed in the landscape plans that we were looking at earlier. I can go back to those if we want to take a closer look.
I know the report mentioned, that a lot of the original plantings are gone, but the original stonework is still there. Could you just briefly overview what is original that they're keeping? What stonework are they taking out or keeping? I mean, just in general.
There are areas, and yeah, again, this is something I think they do a more eloquent job of presenting, but I know, for example, the carport here, not the carport, the entry parking area, they're removing stone there because it's very uneven and it poses a risk for falling, because I know some of the family members are, they need to have stable ground. And so that's, an example of it's brick and it's going to be changed to a smoother, more uniform height stone that's easier to walk on. I know there's also some changes to the material around the northern part of the house as well. A lot of this is in disrepair. We have trees overgrowing the retaining walls and just overgrowth of vegetation in general. There's no existing gardens up here at this time. If there likely once was, but so essentially they're cleaning, or they're doing some grading up along this hillside here, and then as you can see, they're putting in lawns and pathways and gardens. I can pull up a materials board perhaps as well to that we can look at, if that's something that you would find helpful.
Do any commissioners have any further questions on the gardens that are proposed?
I have
Okay.
a number of comments too, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Duncan.
Okay. Can you go back to that plan view? Yeah, and you had one before, which actually I think drew section lines through it. There we go. Yeah, can you blow up that corner one so that we could see what's over in the left, the whole plan is on the left.
Oh, the whole plan. Okay.
Thanks. Okay. Yeah, what you were talking about on the lower left is the motor court. This is
Yes.
a very important element. Reginald Johnson just didn't have the visitors and cars all thrown together here. He very purposely had a garage wing on the entire different part of the house and different roadways coming up to them, so that you had a planned approach. And it wasn't just Reginald Johnson, it was also Florence Yock. And she's one of our most noted landscape architects from the period, who also did lots of work on Hollywood films. So she knew how to make something look good as you approached it, because that's so important in films. And part of that planned approach, of course, was what you saw in the motor cart. And to me, a whole lot of change is going on in the motor court. For one thing, of course, there was a tree that was in the center of this that they're removing. They're saying they have to do that, I guess, for, maybe the fire department or something like that, so that it
Correct.
the turnaround. And they're saying it was actually a replacement tree, so you're not losing the same one. But I would say you're losing an important aspect of the design when you do that. The other thing is it was treated very simply before with almost all this red brick. And now you've got three different materials. And one of the things they're trying to do is put in an entirely different axis into this motor court that didn't exist before. And that's the red section line actually shows you that axis, because now they want people to be able to come out of this upper terrace, which is at the upper end of that section line, and come through new gates. And then that would align with the circulation that they're providing around the bottom part of the house. I think I understand why they want to do this, and it reflects the change that is occurring all throughout the house. Is they're really increasing the opportunities to go outside the house, and do that sort of California living style thing, like going in and out of the house and allowing pedestrians to do that. But before, you had a totally controlled entry. We didn't want people wandering in and out of the house. We wanted to make sure all those visitors arrived at the front door and they didn't see any distractions before then. And so this is a very different approach, and I think you're changing the gardens when you do that. I think the same thing is happening in the courtyard. And I would say the courtyard is almost as important as the motor cart. It may not be what you would say is a public element, but it sure made as public as possible with all the pictures of this space that you see in the real estate advertisements and in promotion. And for instance, in the one book I have here of Florence Yock, the one picture they make sure they show you is in the courtyard. And I think when you start to look at what the plantings are planned for in the courtyard now, as compared to what they were before, to me, it's just too big a change. With a completely different feeling. And I know a lot of the exterior elements they say in our historical report, well, they no longer exist. I don't understand why they're no longer existing, because they were in pictures that were depicted and shown to us when we had the nomination to that. So later on, when I get a chance, I want to be able to show you the pictures so that you can see how different what's proposed as compared to what there was before. Could we go then to the next one, which shows the, is there a blow up of the courtyard? Oh, yeah, here we go. No, note here, actually,
I believe that's the motor court.
that's the motor court.
Yes.
And you can see the page is significantly more complicated, and you can see that entry gate, which is leading up into the upper terrace, which you didn't have before. And then if you go over to the right, this, I believe, is the courtyard, but you would never know it. It's actually mislabeled in our historic report, and it's labeled as the motor court. And when I saw this, I couldn't believe this is the courtyard, because this does not look anything like the plantings we saw in this courtyard, and it has a totally different feel. And so I just have to wonder, and this would be one of the questions I'd have for the historian, did you actually analyze what's proposed and consider how it compared to what Florence Young originally did? When, Mr. Chair, you think we could see those pictures, I'd love to have the opportunity, but.
Okay, I know today is just quick comments on this. I just want to let people know that we do have the Moody Sisters, and they have to disappear. The owners of Moody Sisters Cottage are only here for another 45 minutes. So I'm going to try to get us to get to that real quick, but
Can I get?
yeah, go finish on the comments.
Can I get Jonathan to show those pictures quickly?
Okay, I see the point.
Yeah.
No, they're not in there.
Are they? Oh, are they photos that you guys? I could pull up photos as well.
Oh, no, you're not.
I don't know if they're
gonna
different
have-
photos.
You're not gonna have some of these.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Mr.
Is that in the regional Rancho San Carlos?
Yes.
The other report.
When I saw the pictures that were like this, that showed us the gardens, I just couldn't believe what was happening. Because this was just, what the heck happened? Not only is it a construction site, but there are none of the plants that we saw on this property 5 years ago. And so this is the place where it's now proposed to have these very formal lines of, didn't have the opportunity to make sure they were Italian cypress, but that's what they look like, Italian cypress. They may actually be a juniper species. But what they've got proposed for this feels nothing like what we had before. Can I get to the rest of them, Jonathan?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so these are all what you have in your historic right. Keep going. Okay, and where are the ones I sent you?
These are the ones from the email.
No, I emailed you ones that had the pictures that have the old ones featured in our nomination.
I think this is what I saw when I pulled up, open that file. Commissioner Duncan,
Okay,
because I saw it. Commissioner Nye, is that
The ones you sent Sunday.
Isn't these the same pictures that was in that email?
that's what they start with, but then they show the new ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this looks like it's.
There we go.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
Okay.
Just further.
This is what we were shown the courtyard looked like when the nomination came forward. And now, if you look at this garden, you can just see that has a really different feel from the rows of cypress that are planned for it now. So I would be really concerned about how they're changing this. If you could keep going a couple more, just so you can have a feel for what that, you actually have the boxwood parterres. And you have obviously the palm, the tropical part elements. And some of those are featured in the original pictures that are in the book I've handed out. And if you keep going. And you can keep going. And is there one more maybe? Okay, so I'm just pointing out how different that is, and I would say that's a major change that. If this is an important Florence Yacht Garden, I'd sure like to see the rehabilitation more in this direction rather than in what's proposed. And they do call out in the historian's report, oh, well, not everything was original Florence Yacht. And that's an excuse to change everything? To me, that doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have one or two very quick.
Go ahead, Commissioner Knight.
Getting back to the area that has brick paving,
The motor court you're
the
talking about?
motor court going way back. Bricks paving can be restored, and they are very characteristic of this era. And the brick should be retained and restored and used, and not modern types of paving put in there. And I couldn't agree more with Commissioner Duncan. The proposed courtyard is just totally out of any conceivable acceptable style as far as the character of that house is concerned, and the entire property. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Knight. Let's move on. Any other commissioners have comments? What I'm thinking, I'm trying to think how we can proceed with this. Since this is just an informational item from the Planning and Development Department, is we know now that this is now going directly to the Planning Commission. This already went through MBAR. We could, as a commission, decide to write a letter to the Planning Commission with our suggestions. If that could be a route that we could do. And we could also, if we decide about, they're talking about, we want to go further with the historic landmarks or merit designation, we could schedule an agendized item in the future for that. But for the time being, for the short notice we have here, I'm not sure when the date is for Planning Commission, that we could at least authorize a letter with our suggestions that we brought up today. Any comments from commissioners on this direction?
Mr. Chair, I'm
Yes.
part of this team. Can I give you a little more background? Would this be a good time?
Oh, yeah, go right ahead, go right ahead.
My name is Lisa Murphy-Rivas, and I am the community liaison for Rancho San Carlos. The owners hired me right before escrow closed to make sure that nobody panics about what's happening with the property, and that everybody knows that these owners are responsible stewards of the land and have full intention to value the historic significance of it. So I want to just give you a little bit of background on that. Prior to the owners looking at this property, it had been on the market for 6 years. The photos, the beautiful lush photos you saw, were the last beautiful lush photos that existed for that property. The water was turned off. It was not maintained. So when the owners purchased it, you see what they purchased it with. You all are looking at a beautiful historic house. The owners are looking at a home, a family home for people who have different mobilities, from toddler to wheelchair to walker to high heels. It is a home that's being restored to be lived in. The consultants prior to escrow closing engaged with Post Hazeltine for years. It's been nearly 3 years. They hired Tim Barber Associates, architecture firm. This is the third Reginald Johnson home that these architects have restored. They hired Wilson Bird Woltz for landscape architecture. These folks have done beautiful, beautiful private, public lands all around the world. including Monticello. They hired Stonemark Construction Management, who have for decades done complex restorations like this. These folks have been looking at historic photos, have been researching the architects, the era, and everything that goes into a property like this. They are also going to keep it a producing orchard. The community is fearful that this piece of property will be divided and sold lot by lot. That will not happen as long as these owners own this and as long as they can live there as a family estate. There was a rumor about the round barn being torn up inside. That is not happening. It is being beautifully restored. The only difference is horses will not be kept there. Because quite honestly, if they were, PETA would be down our throats. And I come to you with the hope that we are instilling confidence that the time, the resources, the experts, and the substantial financial investment, substantial, is being given. I'm a local, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of my feeling, and this is personal. Santa Barbara County was given a gift when these people closed escrow. They have the means, they have the interest, and they have the experts and the desire to do what's right for this property. But the problem that they are having now is it has taken so much longer. They already knew the complexities of the 30 lots on one property, 236 acres, different elevations, and 30 years of deferred maintenance. So the only challenge they are having right now is with delay after delay after delay. And I implore you to please look at the plans that were submitted for MBAR. Look at the historian reports, I think we've got 3 now, and understand the expertise of the team we have. And then I will give you one more bit of information, my phone number. Or if anybody, any neighbor, anyone says they're overdeveloping that property, they are doing damage to the property, they are fill in the blank, please call me. Please have your neighbors call me. I will explain what's happening to restore the property and rehabilitate the land that has been left for 30 plus years. That phone number is 805-220-0431. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate
What
it.
is your name again?
My name is Lisa Murphy Rivas, and I'm the community liaison for Rancho San Carlos. This is another unique element of this piece of property. Before escrow closed, I got a call from the potential owners who said, we very much want to remain anonymous and stay behind the scenes, but we know this property is of great interest to this community. So we do not want to appear closed off. We want to make sure that people are responded to, that they understand that we're being responsible stewards of this land, and that we will be restoring this house to its beautiful glory. But we do need to live in it. The house was built at a time where soon after the Lindbergh baby was kidnapped. As you all know, you're historians, the people who lived here before were afraid of that. The house was constructed in a way where it was closed off an interior. People couldn't play outside. This is not the lifestyle of the family that has purchased it. The garage was built at a time when we all had chauffeurs. There are no chauffeurs. I pulled my ID4, it's a Volkswagen all electric, ID4 up to one of those driveways or to one of those doors. I couldn't get in without my mirrors scraping. We tried a Tesla right next to us. We tried a Volkswagen Tiguan. You could not get in there unless you were so precise. If you have beeps on your cars, it was beeping like crazy. So the changes that are being made may seem drastic, but they are done in the least drastic way for the research that was done on what exists in the house and what can be modernized without changing that beautiful character. The gardens are mimicking what we've seen in historical photos and elements of the house. There's a lot of octagonal pieces in the interior ceilings of the house that are reflected in the gardens. So it is being done. It's being done well. It's being done beautifully, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Reese, for coming and talking today. Appreciate it. Okay, questions from commissioners? We need to move on here.
I would just need to make an announcement for public comment.
This is an agenda item, so we don't have to do a public comment. We do? Over, okay. So do we have any public that would like to speak on this item?
Not seeing any raised hands.
Okay, thank you so much for reminding me. Okay, Commissioner Duncan.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do want to thank the representative for appearing here today. And I do want to say that even though my comments might have been negative about certain elements, there are certain aspects of this that you cannot question in terms of they're not adding a square foot to the house. I mean, there are certain basic premises to the remodel which we couldn't argue with. And certainly, I think for the most part, the changes to the windows and doors are things that we could understand. As noted before, they simply need better circulation and certainly more light in some cases. So I'm glad they have hired those that are knowledgeable about working with an architect and a structure like this. But on the other hand, one thing we should note is this triggered the development plan requirement because of how huge this project is. For myself, on the planning commission, we got development plans when ranches were planning to have indoor riding rinks, covered riding rinks, and that's they triggered the 20,000 square foot limit that would require a development plan. So I point that out simply because of that shows you the size of the resource we're dealing with now. And when you have a resource this large, we need to be extra careful. The other thing we would point out is, as people involved in history, sometimes 30 years of neglect is benign neglect in that you don't have the assaults on integrity that we might see otherwise. And the fact that this stayed in the same family all that time. So that means a lot of changes are occurring now, and that's why we would want to look at them very carefully. And it's good. We're glad to hear the owners are too.
Thank you, Commissioner Duncan. Any other commissioner comments? Oh, Commissioner Knapp.
Well, I too appreciate a spokesperson who got here and made those comments. This body, this commission has never been over the top in its demands and has always wanted to work with its with applicants and members of the public, fully understanding, as Mr. Duncan pointed out, that times have changed and needs have changed, and tasteful and appropriate renovations and alterations have always been appreciated by this commission, and we continue to feel that way. However, I don't understand an architect who has already worked on 2 or 3 other buildings by this particular architect. I almost hesitate to say I'd be afraid to look at them, that this is the best he can do. He or she. And one thing that needs to be made clear is it really doesn't matter what this historic designer did on other properties. What he designed, what the landscape architect designed for other properties has not so much, it's not that relevant for what needs to happen here. This is its own world, its own layout. And when there's so much evidence of what was there before in the way of historical landscaping in particular, there's no reason why all of these experts can't refer to those and recreate what was there and what deserves to be put back if possible, especially with clients who have the funds to do that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on this. And one of the experts had worked on Monticello. I've been to Monticello, and I can tell you that place is the ultimate, the absolute ultimate perfection as far as digging into the records and reconstructing and preserving the heritage of our country. And that is definitely not the case here. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Nye. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Watash?
Nothing new to add to the two comments already made, which I agree with. Only thing I would add is that this property was eligible for designation. And as such, even though the landscape had died from lack of water, we have a record as to what the landscape looked like and what the building looked like when it was declared eligible. Now, with the changes that have been made and as built, as they say, and proposed, this will no longer be possible. So our county has lost a landmark opportunity for those that and remember this, and for those who might want to see it. They will not be able to do so. We cannot designate something in which the fabric has been altered so radically that it's no longer, it's not the same building. That is not to say that what is being proposed is being done with a fine hand. It's just not relevant to what was there. And times have changed, needs have changed, that is all recognized. I think the treatment of the public and private and servant spaces in the building were very much a part of the original design, and those program requirements have changed. But I'm on the fence about this. Again, it's being done with a fine hand, but it's just not correct. So those are my thoughts.
Any other commissioners? So this was comments today. I mean, we could bring this back. I'm going to do my little comments. As you commissioners know, we saw this as a potential landmark back in 2017 to 2018. It was for the entire estate, which is 280 plus acres. And at that time, this commission decided not to landmark it and totally, but we felt at the time, and it's in our minutes, that we thought the house was potential for a historic landmark, and also the round barn is potential for a historic landmark. We had the very private owner actually come to one of our meetings. And he actually stated that he was interested in maybe making the house a historic landmark and the round barn a historic landmark. But since the property was up for sale, he would, he definitely didn't want the whole estate, but he was open to the possibility of the house and the round barn. Of course, the estate was sold since then, and we never got further with that. But even the former owner thought that it was, it was eligible for a historic landmark, just as every single historic report has mentioned that we've seen, the last 4 or 5 of them. So I personally feel that, the house and the round barn is potential to be a historic landmark. But as we know, the current owners say they do not want that. But as you know, by our bylaws, we could do a nomination if we wanted to, but that is just my personal opinion, and it's up to the commission what we want to do. We can bring this back as an agenda item, as a potential to look at it as a potential historic landmark. The other thing is, I mentioned earlier today, this is going directly to Planning Commission now. If any of our concerns that we addressed today, we want to do it in a letter. We've done this in the past to other commissions. We could do that, and you could direct me to send a letter to the Planning Commission. So, I want to wrap this up because we do have an owner for another property that's waiting, and they only have a few minutes left to be on it, but any direction for me would be helpful.
I'll support the letter.
Okay, we have a support letter from Commissioner Wictosh for Planning Commission.
I would,
Commissioner Duncan.
I also agree that we should send the letter to the Planning Commission. I'd like to see Rancho San Carlos come back with consideration of a designation of place of historic merit. I want to make sure we get this on the list, because it's outrageous that this project got as far as it did without it coming back to us. And the excuse was it wasn't a landmark. We got as close as you can get to making it a landmark. And we want to make sure it's listed at least at place of historic merit status, so that no further changes could occur without reasonable allowance for us to comment on those changes. And that has put us in the place that we're in now and dealing with an as-built situation, which is we should only be dealing with that in an emergency, like the Mission Canyon Dam bridge that we dealt with. So I'd like to see both a letter in the short term and in the longer term, having consideration of the house and the octagonal barn for historic merit. We certainly have plenty of documentation, and the report we had for today's meeting also says that these things would qualify for this discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry about that. Any other commissioner comments?
very quickly, I agree with the recommendations already put forward. I would, instead of a letter, I would send one of our patented bulletin memos. It'd be easy,
Okay, when I said letter, I think that's what it really meant, is our memorandum. Okay, so I kind of hear a consensus or as chair to send a memorandum to the Planning Commission. Okay, and would a commissioner like to work on that letter with me as in past? Any volunteers? Have a Commissioner Nyes laughing. Would you like to volunteer? To work on a letter?
I'll help and
Or Commissioner Duncan? The three of us? Okay, okay, we'll work on that. And
Make it 4.
make it 4? Okay.
Good.
Well, we have to, is 4 okay? Okay. And so we'll do the letter. Now we have also bring this back as an agenda item to look into maybe doing his place of historic merit or a historic landmark. So I'll work on putting an agenda item for that in the future. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Soren, for being here today and doing the presentation.
Thank you.
I think it's appropriate that we thank Ms. Rivas for.
Yes, and also the representative of the property owners, really appreciate
Your
that.
presentation made some impact.
Also, everything that is being removed, every stone piece that isn't going to be used, that is able to be retained, will stay on site, used at another location if it can. If in the future, somebody came in and said, no, we want something back in, it will be stored on site available.
Thank you very much. Okay, I need to move on quickly here. We just got word that we did have, I was gonna move the agenda to our first standard agenda item, the Moody Sisters Cottage, but it looks like we ran out of time. The property owner was waiting for that item. They want a continuance till next month now. It was just gonna be an update of the Moody Sisters. And County Council, are they still there? Can we quickly?
I am here. Hello, this is Lori.
Hi, Lori.
Hi. Yeah, my husband has a flight. He was originally on the 5:30 flight this morning, but switched it to the 12:30 flight because we thought we'd be on at 10. So he's
Okay.
leaving for the airport. I have a friend who can drive him, but yeah.
We
So
were just doing today, we're doing an update. We're really not going to go in any deep discussion. But we just were getting an update from John Zarovich, who's a planner and also zoning enforcement. He was just going to give us the initial where the process is on this. So it wasn't going to be a real long discussion because we really don't have much information. And he is just planning to give us a short update on where the county is right now.
okay, and then yes, depending on what he says, I would like to talk as well.
Oh, definitely. You're open, any public comment is available. So can we move? I want to suspend items 6 and 7, postpone it till after we do our standard agenda. Let's move directly to standard agenda, which would be the first, the Moody Sisters Cottage. And like I just said to the owner is today we're just hearing briefly on where this is through planning and development as far as what happened. They really can't say a lot because it's just initial process. Everyone received the original nomination form from 2014 for Moody Sisters Cottage, so all commissioners should have that. And it does say that HLAC does have discretion on changes to a property or if a property is demolished. So today we're going to hear from John Zarovich, and I believe he's online. He's the planner, he's a planner, but he's through code enforcement, I believe. And I'm going to just turn it over to him and he's going to give us an update. And thank you, Mr. Zarovich, for being here today.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. So can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah. So my name is John Zarovich. I'm actually the manager for the Energy Minerals Compliance Division, which oversees the zoning code enforcement program for the county. So I just was here, Mr. Chair, we spoke earlier in the month about what this would be. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot more to report. We can acknowledge that, the owner did demolish the Moody Cottage. And it's my understanding that the building materials have been removed off-site as well. That they did not obtain a demolition permit first, which would be a requirement as this is located in the coastal zone. So we are currently, we received the complaint and it's currently under investigation. So I don't really have too much more than that. And that's pretty much what's already kind of in your agenda, I think. So it is what it is, and that's what I have today. I know there's a short of time for this, but I would be interested if the committee is going to talk about what options you may pursue. I would be interested in that because I know HLAC does have the authority under Chapter 18A of the county code. And they have the responsibility for code enforcement for historic landmark structures. So I would be I'll be here available for any questions, but I just don't have much to say, but I'll monitor the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
As chair today, I was thinking that today we should just hear what we just heard, just as an update. And the idea was that he would come back to us as this proceeds with more detailed information. And then at that time, I think then we could decide what we want to do to go forward, if we want to do anything to go forward. But I think right now it's too early to really decide what to do. I'm thinking that, John, you're planning to come back to us when you have more information or more details of how it's progressing. That's correct?
As this proceeds, I can certainly return when we have some, I don't know if it'll be available next month or whatever your next meeting is. But again, as this is not just a more simple code enforcement complaint, right? This involves a historic landmark. And so I know there are options available to your commission on how and whether you want to pursue that. So, if you do,
That's what I, yeah.
if your commission wants to have that discussion, I'd like to just kind of, like I said, observe that to see which direction your commission may want to go or have thoughts on it. But I am going to be available as we get more information at some time at a future meeting. I'm not sure when that would be, but yes.
So I would like to hear from commissioners, but my idea is let's wait till this moves down the road a little bit further with what is going on through the Planning Development Commission. I definitely want to hear from the property owner before they have to leave. But I personally don't think this is a good time to decide on what we want to do as far as our options. I think it's a little early yet for that. But other commissioners, would you want to weigh in, Commissioner Witosh?
I just have a question about available documentation on the Moody Sister House, photographs, anything written material, any documentation, not nomination forms.
We gave everybody a nomination form in your packet, and it tells you what our purview is as HLAC. And online is the more should be photos online on the website on the Moody Sisters, because it is landmark number 50. You go on the county website, landmark 50, there'll be more information on that.
Okay, all right, thank you. I did not see that, but that's fine.
Any other commissioner comments?
Mr. Chair. Yes, it's the resolution that we received in our packets, not the nomination.
I'm sorry, it's the resolution that was signed. It was created a landmark in 2014, and the resolution is the one that the Board of Supervisors approved.
Oh, right. What I'd like to do is just sort of see and find out from county council their interpretation of the documents we have before us. So if we look, and then certainly I'd like to hear from the owner too, and also find out if this is the same owner who signed the original resolution.
Yeah, this makes sense because we should be doing questions right now. So this is good. Thank you, sir.
So can you pull up the resolution for us?
Yes.
Here. Hold on, excuse me. So and this is resolution number 14-48 for the Board of Supervisors. Since this was a landmark as compared to a place of historic merit, the commission did its own resolution, and then it went to the Board of Supervisors because our resolution would have lapsed in 90 days. And what I just looking at is our standard condition, which you find on page 2, under 2A, and it says, the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors hereby designates the Moody Sisters Cottage as a historic landmark subject to following conditions, except as set forth in subsection D below. So we'll go look at that too. Demolition, removal, or destruction, partially or entirely, is prohibited unless an application has been submitted to the Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission and express consent in writing is first had and obtained from the commission. That condition was in this resolution, as we would have expected. And then when we look at D, what it points out is basically the interior of the Moody Sisters cottage, as shown on Exhibit A, is not subject to the foregoing conditions. So we were going to allow them to work on the interior, but otherwise demolition was prohibited. So that's pretty simple. It's a pretty simple statement. Now, what you do note too is that there was consideration that it was going to be moved. I'm wondering where it's in the is it in the original description? It points out that the structure may be relocated, and this is under E on the third page. The structure may be relocated intact from its current site. Here we go. There we go. You've got it. You finally caught up with me, Jonathan. Thank you. The structure may be relocated intact from its current site to one selected by the property owner upon receipt of the approval by the Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission. Well, yes, so it was envisioned that it may have to be moved, and we worked on that at least 3 times, I think. Getting to the point of actually writing resolutions to authorize those moves, but that didn't happen. But neither demolition or movement was supposed to occur without our approval. So those seem pretty straightforward. What I'm wondering is going to chapter 18A, and do you have that? And I'm looking at under enforcement of chapter under 18A-8. And if you have the 3-page version of our 18A, then it's on the bottom of the 2nd page. And it says enforcement of chapter. The Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission is charged with the responsibility for the enforcement of the provisions of this chapter and all conditions imposed hereunder. If unable otherwise to obtain compliance with the provisions of this chapter and conditions imposed hereunder, it may refer the matter to the Board of Supervisors or to the district attorney or the county council for appropriate action. So I'm turning to our council here to ask what steps we would take to move along that path and how we might coordinate it with the bodies mentioned in this part of 18A.
It doesn't specify how you would make the referral, but you could just do it through a motion at a meeting, or you could write a letter that the letter might be able to give more information and attach the resolution, for example, and the section 18A 8 or the whole chapter. So I think those are 2 options. Just do it at the meeting. Move that you're referring it, and the chair could verbally do that, or write a letter that might give more information to everyone involved.
But the first part speaks to responsibility of enforcement of the provisions. And one of the conditions has been broken, obviously, in that it's been demolished. And that's clear enough, it would appear. So we don't need to gather any additional evidence. It's simply at this point clear enough that we could state that in a letter to the Board of Supervisors. I mean,
Yes, I believe you could.
and simply point out these conditions that were in the resolution and under 18A.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? We're in the question phase right now.
Yes, I have a question for this is Commissioner Knight, or Mr. Zorovich. What happens next? What's your next step on this investigation, Mr. Zorovich?
Mr. Chair, so as I kind of mentioned earlier, we're doing an investigation, so we're now looking at essentially what options we have under the county code and any other permits and how we would pursue that. So similar, that's why that's really what our next path is. So we're currently doing some research and considering what options there are and what's the best path. And like I said earlier, I think it'd be helpful if we P&D staff knew the direction of the HLAC commission as well. There may be an idea to kind of follow the direction. This is, like I said, a landmark. So we're looking to see what direction you may want to go to see if that's something we would want to further support through the zoning action through the zoning, or it'd be or maybe there's a different path that you may want to go. So really that's where we're at with this. And I'm sorry to be more vague, but that's really where we're at. Like, if I knew more, I would share more with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Whitman.
Teensy question. So when this cottage was demolished, this is a question for the owner. Was it dismantled piece by piece? Were the doors saved, the windows saved, interiors saved, or was it bulldozed over and just turned into smithereens?
It was bulldozed over. We had offered several times to the county to take it apart piece by piece under the supervision of an historian and store it, and we were turned down. So yes, I'd like to speak.
Let's wait. We really shouldn't be asking the owner direct questions during this. We should, when we go to public comment, then I'll have the owners speak and see what they want. But we have to be real careful on this matter. It's a very sensitive matter. Okay. And we've just got to be real careful what we say.
My bad.
No, that's okay. I mean, I'm trying to be real careful here too.
Yeah.
Okay, any other commissioner questions on this? Okay, so now let's move to public comment and then we'll do the commissioner comments afterwards. So now is the time to do public comment for anyone that wants to make comment. And this would be the time that the owner can do us what they want to say. Okay. And any other people that might be online that want to speak on this matter. Okay. Jonathan?
This is Lori Horson. My husband had to leave for the airport. He was originally on a 5:30 flight. I think I told you, switch it to 12:30, thinking he had time. So he apologizes that he couldn't be here. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I feel it's important that you know our position. I think Ron is probably the most familiar with the cottage. We purchased the property in August of 2015. It was marketed as an empty lot, but the cottage was on the property. I know Ron knows, I'm not sure if the other members of the committee know that this is not the original location of the Moody Cottage. It was moved to this property. It was originally on Coast Village Road. So when we purchased the property, we were told the cottage was designated historic, but couldn't be moved. And when we went before MBAR to get our permit for our home, members of MBAR made it seem like it was a really simple process to move the cottage, but it was anything but. I think from day one, we made it clear that the cottage was not consistent with our plans for our property. Petra and Kimberly McCarthy in the planning department, I had several conversations with them. We advertised it, offered to give it away or donate it to the county, UCSB, even offered to pay part of the moving expenses, but were unsuccessful in our efforts. Several people tried. I'm not going to go through the timeline, but you have the records in the Planning and Development Office. The paperwork to get a permit was onerous, restrictions were too much, and HLAC denied everyone's request to move it. So the bureaucratic hurdles really made it impossible for us to find a new home for the cottage. But having said that, HLAC never required us to maintain the cottage. In fact, Ron, I know you'll agree with me on this. You told me when we spoke several times that we could let the cottage fall apart, cave in, just disintegrate, but we could not tear it down. And in fact, those very instructions were what forced us to demolish the cottage. It was in such disrepair that it became a fire hazard. Back in 2022, the fire marshal came to inspect our ADU. He made a comment about the disrepair of the Moody Cottage, saying it was a fire hazard and it would be dangerous to our neighbors. And in fact, I got a letter from him. I'll get back to that, but okay. So anyway, we live in a fire danger zone. We had to evacuate in 2017. And the fires are scary. Look what's going on in Hawaii now. But we have fire alarms and sprinklers in our home, in our ADU, on our patios, and our outdoor cabana. At the direction of MBAR, we removed all plumbing and electrical hookups to the cottage. So as you know, fire is always a danger. The cottage was a fire hazard and a danger to the community. And when, it's not an if, it was definitely a when, it caught fire, it would be too late. We were fearful that a fire could spread and destroy the entire neighborhood. I know we needed a permit. I know we tore it down without a permit. I apologize for that. But the process was going to be way too long. And I was afraid that even if we went through the whole process, the permit would still be denied. And then it became a problem with our homeowners insurance. Our homeowners insurance is, as you know, we're all having problems with homeowners insurance in California. Insurance companies are threatening to not renew and not write policies. Our insurer told us that they were not going to renew our policy if we kept that fire hazard on our property. I'm sure any of you experienced that situation where a homeowner's insurance policy made you remove something that they thought was a fire hazard. I don't know, has any of the committee members had that situation? Mr. Kaufman-Gray?
I'm sure a lot of us have. I mean, I just had to cut down a big pine tree because of my homeowner's insurance.
Right. So I think you can sympathize with us that our homeowners insurance said that they would not renew our policy if we continue to have this cottage on our property. So, like I said, we're not malicious homeowners. We're actually looking out for the neighborhood. It was a fire hazard. I have a letter I can submit from Alex Brumond. He's the captain and the assistant fire marshal for Montecito Fire Protection District. And I'll submit the letter to Jonathan, but I'm just going to read the letter for the record. To whom it may concern, on July 29th, 22, while inspecting an ongoing construction project, in parentheses ADU, Mrs. Corson and I had a discussion regarding an existing older structure on the property. The older structure's condition and construction stood in stark contrast to the newer structure on the property. Our discussion revolved around fire safety as it applied to their property, which is in a high fire zone. I noted several concerns I had with the older structure. Number one, wood shake roof, which is no longer permitted in the district, single pane windows, wood, board, and batten construction in poor condition, rain gutters full of pine needles and eucalyptus leaves, and a non-sprinkled structure. According to Mrs. Corson, there were no services to the older structure and it was not occupied. It was my opinion that the aforementioned circumstances posed a risk to her property and her neighbors in the event of a fire. These conditions also make insuring a property difficult. Signed, Alex Brumond. So I hope that kind of gives you an overview as to the condition of our cottage, why I snapped. I admitted I snapped. I looked at that cottage. It was a fire hazard. I was so scared. It was the roof was caving in. The windows were all broken. It got flooded during the storms in January, the winter storms. It was just a hazard. And I did not want to be the one who was not here one night when an ember hit it and it burnt my neighborhood. So I guess that's pretty much it. Like I said, I was told, I consulted with an attorney a few years back about what would even happen if we tore the cottage down. And he told me that they couldn't even find what the penalty would be. And like an 18A doesn't say what a penalty is. So I was even informed there was no penalty for tearing down a structure that was not habitable or, just in terrible condition. So that's my story. Again, and also we had an environmental report done, which I don't know if that's important to the committee. And it was done last year because I wanted to know if it was dangerous, if it contained asbestos or anything. and it did not. So there were no environmental issues with the cottage. And that's pretty much it. Again, I apologize, but I did what I felt I had to do as a smart homeowner and a good neighbor.
Thank you very much for being here and giving your side of the story on this. Jonathan, do we have any more public comments?
No, that was the only speaker today.
Okay, so now we can move to commissioner comments. And I guess during comments, decide if you want to take action today, since we do have that authority as far as moving this, or should we wait for further updates from planning and development? It kind of sounds like through planning and development, they're kind of looking for our direction and we're kind of looking for their direction. And I'm not quite sure, you know, we're kind of in between the two. It sounds like they'd like to hear from us what we would like done. And I personally kind of want to hear what they're planning to do, since this is the very beginning of this process. But anyway, let's move to comments. So I guess I would say that would be the direction of their comments today about maybe how should we move forward with this as what commissioners would like to see done. Who would like to start? Commissioner Nye. Thank you.
In response to Lori's comments, I was not giving her instructions to allow the cottage to self-destruct.
I'm sorry, I didn't say you gave me those instructions. I said that you just advised me that I was not responsible for maintaining it.
That's closer to what I said, yes.
Right. So you told me the HLAC, I guess, as part of your directives, it says that you can, Historic Landmark Advisory Commission may require maintenance of the premise as a condition for continued recognition of the historic merit of the premises. That's in the HLAC description of how, buildings are designated historic. And in fact, you did not order me to maintain it. You, like I said, you tell, maybe your exact words were, you could let it fall apart and demolish, but you did tell me I had no responsibility to maintain it. And I apologize if my words were confusing.
I haven't looked closely at the resolution. Did we mention any responsibilities for maintenance?
No.
I don't think it is in the resolution.
Yeah, but in any case, I would say that rather than make a decision now on what we should do, I think we need to do our own research on what kinds of enforcement, what options we have, and what planning and development or whoever the enforcement agency is has done in the past in these situations. I don't think we don't know what our options are or what a reasonable response would be. I don't think. So it's my comment.
Okay. Commissioner Duncan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks to the owner for appearing and giving her perspective. For the record, I do want to correct the statement that HVAC denied every request to move it. Okay, that's simply not true.
I disagree with that, but okay, we'll have to agree to disagree.
Well,
Can you
go
tell me
ahead.
when they agreed? For who did they agree to move it?
We had a couple, this is Chair Kaufman Gray. We had a couple of hearings of moving the house, and every time it was going through the process, it ended up fell through, as I remember it. Either the applicant, the person that was going to move it, for some reason, the property they were moving to, it was too small, and so they couldn't move it. Another was,
I
was
recall-
a plumbing issue.
Yes, fire protection.
Septic, I remember septic. The last
Yes,
person dropped out when he
septic.
was asked to provide a paint chip, but that's irrelevant. I'm sorry. So,
Yeah, but we were in favor of moving it. It was just, it never got the permits to be able to be moved. That's
Yeah,
the
okay.
way it was.
okay.
Mr. Chair, if you could.
Go ahead, Commissioner Duncan.
Yeah, if you could ask the speaker to withhold her comments until she's addressed by the chair.
Sorry, I'm so invested in this and whatever. I'll be quiet.
It's not that we don't want to hear your perspective, it's we work a little more efficiently if we're not interrupted, at least this old brain and can't be interrupted too many times. What I would suggest is, Mr. Chair, we need to do some fact finding first. If we were to write a letter to the Board of Supervisors, we need to be able to lay out for the board the record. And so we need to do a little bit of our own fact finding in terms of the different attempts we have made to move this structure and how far we got in each case, so that the board has that knowledge. The other thing is, I think we should hear from the county, and I would suspect county council is the person who needs to speak to us as to what record there is of dealing with this sort of problem before. Because I'm sure it has arisen in some way. And there are also other jurisdictions who deal with this problem, and they have to deal with it in some way. So I'd definitely like to hear from county council as to what past experience has been, what past policy has been, and what options we might have moving forward. And I would imagine county council is going to be talking with planning and development in writing such a letter, figuring out what options there might be. Because certainly the board would want to know what choices there might be. I mean, there's obviously a clear violation of simply not having a permit that they needed when they demolished the structure, apart from violating the condition of no demolition. So we need to do some fact finding, and that's one thing that I think should inform us, and I then hold a future meeting when we have more information about what we attempted in the past and what could be done. And then the other thing is it would probably help if we had Commissioner Nye or somebody who is most knowledgeable about the situation on the site to be able to contribute to that letter that we forward to the board. Somebody who is can speak to some of the issues that have been brought up. Because if this issue comes before the board will obviously hear the testimony we've heard from the owner today, and we should be prepared in terms of answering in some way with what knowledge we have as to the facts of the matter. But we do need, I would say, to pursue this, not necessarily with an insensitive or irrational perspective, so focused on one thing that we cut off our nose to spite our face, but and recognize that the board is obviously going to be in a situation of balancing the various values of our community, historic preservation versus fire protection, etc. But that's what I would suggest here: fact finding and some careful deliberation as to what we might forward and a future commission hearing. Thank you.
Any other commission comments? Commissioner Whitash?
Yeah, I agree with the comments, Mr. Nye and Mr. Duncan's comments about record keeping and fact finding and so on and so forth. What's on my mind is the path forward. I think there is a path. And the way I would look at this is that this particular landmark, number 50, had really suffered from deferred maintenance for such a long period of time that if it were to be looked at, it would be determined by us that it was no longer eligible to remain a landmark. It simply deteriorated to the point, and it says so in writing in article, was it 18A, that the owners are not required to maintain the landmark, and that if they do not maintain it, there's a point at which it would no longer be eligible. So on the grounds that it lost its eligibility, I would say that it is no longer a landmark. And therefore, we've lost the Moody Sister house. We've lost it. It's dead, gone, not coming back. But it is customary for when you are about to demolish a historic structure or place of historic merit, that you document it before you do so. So if there are documents, for example, original plans, or possibly the knowledge of what that house, dimension drawings of that house that could be constructed or reconstructed, that those documents, photographs, any literature that exists, be a part of the record, and that become a file, archived file in the county, and for whoever else would like it, as the house that once existed, and it's gone. But that would be the path that we might be able to resolve this going forward. And it's unfortunate, and I think the owner feels sorry that it happened, but it was a problem. And also, for the record, HLAC did support relocating that house several times, and for the record, and that it was other agencies that determined that the future location of such a house was not permittable because of fire, septic, and water supply, and so forth. Those are things that are not within our control. So it's a complicated situation, but those are my thoughts.
Okay, any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Steinberg.
So being a person who has been through this process and has a house of historic merit, I can tell you that going through HLAC was the easy part. We were going to move our house, and because it's very close to the road, and it just finally gave up, so I can certainly sympathize with the owner here. I guess my question is there a way to deaccession a property that has a status?
What?
Take it out of that. I mean,
Yes, I'll let Commissioner Duncan say that, because we actually went through that recently.
Yes, we can certainly take a property that has a designated status and undesignated. And we've actually done that with one of the tasting rooms in Los Olivos that chose to use the designation of place of historic merit to avoid making changes that the building code might require otherwise, but then totally destroyed the integrity of the structure. Right. So there is a method to do with doing that.
so if that was public knowledge and this owner had known that, she could have deaccessioned it. I'm not sure what word to use for that. And in that case, she would have hopefully gone still through the permitting process to have it demolished. But I guess maybe that's, and to your point too, I mean, I agree that it is onerous at best to try to get through not only B&D, but even more so building and safety. I mean, I went through where, for my historical house, they were trying to make sure that we put sprinklers in it, which of course it didn't have. So I guess that's another, like a way for people who have a property or a building that has a status to know that if this is a possibility, if they wish to go down that path.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Duncan?
obviously that would be within the discretion of the commission, and it would be based upon what was presented to them. Okay. Certainly, we were still hopeful that the property could be moved, and that we were just hopeful that, it was obviously the landing place that was the problem. And in too many different situations, there were new requirements that in fact discouraged the future owners that were too onerous or expensive. So we should obviously just know that going forward, that assuming a property will get moved is a very risky assumption.
Okay, any more comments?
Yes. I have to take a friendly issue with Commissioner Witosh's, some of his comments. We don't have photos or any information on the condition of that building. Last time I saw it, it was in very good condition. And that, granted, could be maybe 3 years ago. I just, what we normally have prefer to deal with are the facts on the ground, and unless photos were taken of it, it's it's anybody's opinion at this point of what the condition was. Definitely have a strong feeling that no maintenance had been done. It's very, I might say, it's not hard to get the fire department to write such a letter. I have seen those so many times, because probably very few of our houses actually meet fire code standards in any case, not to mention something of this age. I note that it says in 18A, the code, it talks about referring a matter to the Board of Supervisors or the district attorney or the county council for appropriate action. So are those really options? Are any of those better option than the Board of Supervisors? That's my question, if anybody knows the answer.
Mr. Chair, I wouldn't attempt to answer that question, but I'm hoping a memo from county council can give answers to that sort of those questions. Obviously,
Do you mean our council?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, obviously, that was written, it's like any of the above situation. I think at this point, we should defer further discussion until we have more facts and more information. And it's not like we know at this point what is the exact path forward, but I don't think we can ignore it. And we need to be able to present, at least to the Board of Supervisors, the situation. Because in the future, certainly we don't want landmarks getting demolished.
Okay, so I have to do my comments too. I pretty much agree with the comments I've heard so far. I think planning development, like I said earlier, is kind of waiting to hear our direction to them. And I kind of agree with a lot of commission comments that maybe it's so early right now, but we should have county council look into this. And as was mentioned, and come up with some potential legal ways that you think is right. And at the same time, let planning development go through their process they're going through right now. I mean, they're starting the enforcement part of it. Have them come back at next month's meeting. And if that will give us like a month, and there should be some progress with what they're finding out of there, and county council can look into it to see more on what they feel might be the direction. And then we can rediscuss this at our September 11th meeting, and then maybe then do a plan to go further. Now, do we need to do on our end any more background, as Commissioner Duncan mentioned, more detailed about the history of the Moody Cottage? I mean, should we be working on any of that, or, the process we've done over the time, just so we have that lined up by September, the September 11th meeting?
Well, I think we could at least have, staff pull the relevant files, since they're so well organized now.
That's true. It's all in one box. It should be right now, John. So maybe we can have our staff, Jonathan, work on that and give us the documentation when we've looked at it in the past. So I think that's what we should do today. I don't think we need to vote on this. We'll just bring this back to the September 11th meeting. And I want to thank Planning and Development for being here today, and they can give us an update on September 11th meeting. Hopefully, Ms. Ryerson can give us on her end, County Council's position or any information. And Jonathan can bring us information about the history of the Moody Sisters Cottage. Okay. Okay.
All right, if I may, I just want to thank you all for listening to me, and I apologize if I
That's
misrepresented.
fine. And thank
You know,
you for
HLAC.
coming. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Okay.
So let's take a 5-minute break real quick, and then we'll move on to agenda item number 2. the people that are involved. And so they're planning to be hopefully at our September 11th meeting. They couldn't confirm the September 11th, but they want to do a presentation to us. So our discussion today, I feel it's not fair to planning development since they're not here to give their side of the story. But I wanted Commissioner Nye to give an update on the conversation he had. Well, he'll go over it. And last month, I went over the conversation I had with, was it Joe Dargill, the planning commissioner, planner. And so we had received a really nice letter, Commissioner Nye and myself, from one of the planners. And it has kind of like a solution that they want to plan, but I'm concerned maybe we shouldn't get into that today and wait for them to come and give the presentation with what they feel will help. I can read it today. Maybe that would be a good thing, is for me to read it after we hear from Commissioner Nye. And then it's an agenda item, so we can discuss it. But I think a lot of this stuff, we should wait until they're here to give their side of the story. So let me turn it over to Commissioner Nye, and he can go over the conference call that he had with the planning development.
Okay, thank you. I actually wanted us to at least bring this up now instead of waiting another month, because there's a lot to absorb, and the implications of what planning and development want to do now are serious, and they're a threat to what we do here. And I think it's worth us sort of contemplating this before the next meeting, because it's an existential situation for us. We kind of addressed this, and the chair has pretty much summarized things, but I had scheduled a meeting with one of the planners, and turned out that there were 3 planners, which was good. Joe Dargill, Nicole Liu, who many of us know, who's now a supervisor. Joe Dargill is a supervisor. Each of these 2 planning supervisors have a core of younger planners who they direct and supervise. And their boss, Travis Seawards, Seawards, he's further up the chain in the planning department. And the bottom line is, the way things have been for many years, at least in the 10 years that I've been here, and I'm sure longer, is properties, applicants with properties over 50 years old have been required to get a history report for their project. And they do the history report, and the project next comes to HLAC for review and comment, with full knowledge that unless it's already a listed property, full knowledge that we are just commenting and reviewing. The concept being that planning and development values our perspective. It values historic and cultural resources. It wants to do the right thing for the community. And we offer that our expertise and our critique of these projects and so forth, with the idea, and this is what we've been actually told over the years, with the idea that our opinion here was valued because the county values its cultural resources and wants to protect them. We also were providing value to the actual planning staff. They don't have any historians. They don't know anything about historical resources, preservation, the relationship between that and CEQA and its requirements. Secretary of Interior standards, are all things that we deal with here and historians do. So they needed us to sort of peer review both the historians and the projects themselves to help and assist the planning department in these applications. And so they're not going to do that anymore. Basically, the new there, it is a new policy, although Mr. Seawards doesn't like us to say that, but it's totally new. And they now say, and they make a very good point. And just mentioning this with Commissioner Steinwax is as we all know, the permitting situation for applicants now is a nightmare. And it can take months and years to get a building permit and go through all the various hoops. Up until now, one of the hoops was us. But the county staff is so overworked and underpaid and so frustrated. Somebody noticed that applicants, I mean, the county is not required to have HLAC review and comment. There's no requirement where they made it very clear, you are an advisory board. So now they're not going to send applicants and reports to us anymore.
This is the new policy.
That's new. Yeah, this is what they're going to come to us and explain next time. But just so you'll know what's bubbling here. And I think it's personally, it's if how strict they're going to be. That's why I don't know. I was surprised that this San Carlos showed up out of the blue. But otherwise, if that's their approach, how often are we actually going to meet? Once a year, there aren't that many landmarks, and I did pose the question Mr. Duncan asked me to pose was, if somebody comes forward and their project is already listed as a landmark or a place of merit, would they automatically have us review the project? Well, they didn't answer that question. They ignored it. Mr. Seward's letter, he didn't address it. Maybe he doesn't know. It was pretty shocking to me how little staff, the current staff, and because there's been changeover, the old timers are gone. Seward's only been there 4 years. Joe Dargel may be the same. Thank God there's Nicole Liu, who's been there, I think, 18 years, and seen how we work and she's one of the few supervisors who understands what we're here for. So I forgot the point I was gonna make there, but if nothing's gonna be brought into comment and review, then I don't know what we're here for and why any of us would want to serve on this. And unfortunately, it implies that they don't value us. They don't value cultural resources. They don't say that. The three people were just, they were practically in tears about how badly they're being treated by applicants. They're threatened, they're sued, lawsuits are threatened. And this is back to what we were just talking about on your place. But the process is so bad, and Howard has mentioned this also for the staff, that they're happy to not have to hold up one more hoop to applicants, because they're trying to get things processed. But I was shocked by how little this current staff really understands what we do and why we do it. And this is why one of the suggestions I think that staff wants to placate us. They don't want us to go rogue if we indeed can or want to in response, but they I talked to Howard about this, he was laughing, but one of the things they suggested, well, maybe we could hold an educational seminar for county staff on historic preservation. So, which actually happened, 15 years ago. Alex Cole did that, but it's all new people. And Nicole was there. She remembers it. Alex Cole, historian. That's so, that might be worthwhile. But in this situation we're in, the other suggestion was that maybe there's some way that the planning and development can send us all reports.
Yeah, I was
that are
gonna
there.
go over that real quick.
Okay,
You want me
I'll
to
leave
just-
that one.
Yeah, I would just piggyback on this, just to try to make it
Anytime.
clear. So the overall is we are here, what they look at, I'm looking at planning development side is, and they will come and give their presentation in the future. But the conversations I've had is, well, you're a historic landmark, so you're to deal, your job is to create new historic landmarks or historic places of merit, and then also maintain them or review them. If one of those is coming up for a remodel or something, that would come to us. We really, according to them, our bylaws and 18A does not say that we look at every project that's over 50 years old that has a historic report that says that it is potentially a historic landmark. If the property owner doesn't want it, then they're not going to bring the project through us before it goes to MBAR or Planning Commission. So if they ask the property owner, do you want your property to be a landmark? They say no, okay, we won't go to agent.
Yeah,
So that's their
and that's
general.
a new policy.
Right.
And
I can't say
What-
new to them.
they don't like the word new.
So what they've come down, we're talking about this letter, and we both, I got the letter, and they're gonna come, and it went through all the different points where they feel it says that we do not have discretion to review these projects, but they have a solution. At least they're trying to figure out a solution. So I'm going to quickly go over it, but they will do a presentation that will go over this. But they have three suggestions for improved coordination. The first one, which I think is interesting, is we are looking into setting up a box account where only HLAC members will have access to where planners can upload historic reports for all levels of significance, so that HLAC members have a resource for identifying properties that they wish to bring for discussion, even if planning and development staff will not be bringing the project property to HLAC due to the property owner does not have a desire to be landmarked. So the idea is, we have the box for our monthly meetings. The idea, every time there is a historic report done, so like say Rancho San Carlos, we just got a new one, they would put it in a box. All of us would have access to that box if we want to take the time to go through each one of those historic reports. If we feel that property or what's going on with that property deems that we should look at it, even though it's going to be bypassing us, we can call them to bring it for us like we did today with Rancho San Carlos. And that's how Rancho San Carlos came to us. We talked about it last month. Property owner said they didn't want it landmarked, so they didn't come to us. We had discussion that we wanted to come back. And so it came back and we saw a discussion today about it. That is their projection for the future. Now, the other things they have on here.
But,
Okay, let me just finish this two things.
because I wouldn't think there would be a historical report if the owner didn't have a business.
If it's over 50 years old and planning development, they will require a historic report.
Oh.
Yeah. And so, the first phase. And so those will be, and Commissioner and I knows there's like 18 or 20 out there that have bypassed us. So all of these reports would be available. But as you know, each report is like 100 and some pages. So I mean, it would be a huge volume of information that we would have access to. Now, there's two other things they were considering, and this is under the title of suggestions for improved coordination. So the first is the box to have the historic reports. The second is we are coordinating on an advisory for feedback letters to applicants that will inform them of the opportunities to attend HLAC and some of the benefits of designation. So in other words, they would let the applicant know that what the benefits are if they want to become a historic landmark for their property, to try to encourage them to go through that process. And the third one is what Commissioner and I mentioned, is we hope to set up a training with staff on historical landmark process, identifying historic resources, and tips on reviewing historic reports. So in other words, a training for staff to try to figure out if it's important to come to us. So those are those three suggestions, which they're planning to do a whole presentation to us. But I thought I would just try to put that together right now. But we're in the process of questions, I guess. So we need to, I'm going to open this up to commissioners. They can ask questions on this.
I have another comment to make.
Okay.
Before that. You used this San Carlos project as an example. Well, you saw how much of a disaster that was. You're basically, we didn't have time to review the information really well. There was no historian here to present it. There was a planner. It was just a piece. It was just a piece of the project. So if that sounds like what they want it to be like, using the box, where so we get to read the history report ahead of time, but we don't hear a presentation, we don't hear the architect, we don't hear the historian. So how can we make an informed comment or review? It's not a real substitute, in my opinion. I'll stop at that.
I will say something, but I'm chair and I cannot. do that. So let's go to questions. So we have questions. Okay, go ahead.
So, and this, it sounds snarky and contentious question. I'm just gonna preface with that, but what is the benefit?
Of going through HR?
No, what's the benefit of a designation to the owner?
I would like you to explain, because since you are the owner of a property, but I think a lot of it has to do, you don't have to do things that they normally would make you do.
Not true.
Not true? Okay.
First of all, nobody knows what the state code is for historic construction, or nobody knows in planning and development, nobody knows in building and safety. This is like my whole thing about the sprinkler system is a good example. They came back and stopped everything, said you have to put sprinklers in the house. I'm like, well, they didn't have sprinklers in 1906. And I had the code from the state, you know, as did my architect. Well, then they came back and said, well, you don't have to put them inside, but you can put them outside on the eaves. I'm like, well, first of all, if there's gonna be a fire, it's probably gonna start at the kitchen, so outside sprinklers is gonna, I mean, it delayed everything for a good 2 months to start with. So I do have this wonderful little house that is the William and Lydia Davis house, and I love it. I don't get a tax benefit. I don't get any kind of benefit for reconstruction or renovation or anything like that. What I have as a benefit is, you know, the fact that I love it. You know, I come from back east, so I don't think 1906 is very old anyway, but it's only self love that to me is a benefit. There is no, and I'm on your list, you know, which is nice to see that. Nobody stopped at my house and tried to come in and have a tour, which is also nice, but you know, I don't get, the city of Santa Barbara gets tax credit for restoring historic buildings, but anybody in the unincorporated area does not. And the reason that I was told is because there's a staff shortage, and we know that's true. But I would say that, you know, perhaps owners shouldn't have to pay $80 an hour for, and that was years ago, it's probably $150 now an hour to have an official historian do something for your house. Maybe there could be some kind of help from the county as far as getting these onto the registers, right? And I agree that having public meetings to, or even internal staff meetings to say like, why would you want to do this? I mean, what is the benefit to the general public? What is the benefit to the owner? What is the benefit to the county as far as restoration and renovation of the history of the buildings and properties in the county? But, you know, I would ask, and it said it was snarky, it was contentious, but there isn't really a benefit to an owner to get that status other than worrying that you're going to be stopped from doing things you may want to do.
I have a response. So the state historic building code allows the owner of historic properties to do remodeling and to do repairs without what they call strict compliance with the current codes. So there are exemptions for things of riser heights and width dimensions in restrooms, bathrooms, et cetera, thresholds, door widths, et cetera, all of which, if you had to strictly comply with the current code, would demolish the building.
Right.
So those are benefits. I mean, they may not apply to your building because your building is maybe okay, but they are there. So the other thing about taxing, the money that you spend to restore or rehabilitate an historic property, I believe is tax deductible in certain jurisdictions. I don't know that it's not applicable in the county. The city, I believe, the money you spend is tax deductible.
The county does not have that.
Okay,
The Mills Act is considered financially. The board of supervisors have never approved it because it's a cost. It's a cost, but the difference is the city of Santa Barbara has hundreds of historic buildings, whereas the county just has a handful.
Yeah.
So
that would be.
and it requires a lot of staff to maintain It requires annual reports to the state on behalf of staff. So that's why the county doesn't have it. So the benefits are as a practically non-monetary. I mean, you can't, and that's, we can't put a gloss on that. So that, again, it's an example of their ignorance of the real world in the planning department. The benefits aside from the historic building code are on an emotional level and benefits to the community. You can't quantify that. Preserving his cultural resources. I'll let other people talk.
And we are in the question part of this. Some questions too, I guess.
Question.
Well, I guess Commissioner Nye and myself about, because we're the ones that have talked to planning and development.
How does that fit in with CEQA? Because CEQA has a whole cultural resource, provisions that they, that it's.
Would you mind speaking? Like,
Oh, I was just questioning how that would fit in with CEQA, which is, that does have cultural and historical factors that have been deemed important and that should be considered. So I'm just, that's my question.
What
I mean,
what specifically are you asking?
well, I mean, I would,
I mean, in terms of the benefits?
well, no, not in terms of the benefits, just in general. If all of a sudden they stop looking and we stop observing if there's any historical,
That,
I mean,
that's where the county is making itself very vulnerable.
yeah, that's
They're afraid of applicants
doing them.
suing. Well, wait till somebody in the community sues them.
That's what I was wondering, because they,
They're not thinking it through. Again, that was one of the values of what we did.
Exactly.
Is, and in fact, I had a planner tell me once,
yeah,
we really appreciate HLAC because it helps us tell the applicant. It takes us off the hook
yeah,
that you're not compliant with CEQA or other types of zoning because you're not respecting this resource.
Okay, Commissioner Malcolm, you have a question?
Yeah, following along the lines of what Ron just said, also, we've never really had more than 2 or 3 issues or properties to look at per month, and that's not even consistent. So I'm wondering, what is the big deal for them not to give us these properties to look at or comment on? It's not that many, and it's doing good for those property owners for the most part. So I'm not getting it. Why the stonewalling now? There, just because it's just a little bit more work for the staff to do? Is that, I don't get it.
A lot of it's about the applicants and wanting to speed up their, whatever they plan to do. They feel that it's taking so long that they're afraid that there's going to be lawsuits and potential lawsuits down the road. And so they're scared. And it's Ron,
Okay,
Commissioner I said, I think a lot of these questions, we need to really write these down. And when they come and do their presentation, then do these questions in, because we really can't answer these. I mean,
Yeah,
and
because we're really mitigating potential lawsuits also.
Right.
The public outcry, that's why we're doing this,
I would
because of the
recommend-
public outcry from before. People were wondering,
why didn't we see?
why didn't we sit, that property's gone now, and the landmark commissioners would hear about it from people in the community. We never heard about it. So that's why we're getting these referrals from the planning department. That's how it started.
Right.
To mitigate all this stuff, the public outcry, and now the pendulum's swinging back, and because this guy, I don't know, out of ignorance or just because he doesn't want to deal with the public, because they don't want to, or the individual applicants, because they're threatening to sue him. Like, come on, grow a pair. I'm just saying, no, seriously, this guy, I don't know, he's just,
I really think that all commissioners think about this thoroughly. And when it comes on the agenda, now I'm saying September 11th, it isn't official, so it might be after that, but they are coming to us with pretty much what I read from the letter, going over their proposal. And then we can really think about these questions and ask them during that meeting, because it will be an agendized meeting. Let's see.
I'll say that these three planners are very nice people. So don't get the wrong idea that they're trying to be malicious.
well,
They're
there's
just
that one
not-
guy,
they're
I guess
not
that
in-
the one guy in charge is really the one
Oh,
that's,
Travis, yeah, he seems to be the front man. But he's actually a very sweet guy, but
then
Okay,
maybe,
you know,
let's
his
move on.
policy,
It's
the
almost-
effect of his policies.
Let's move on. We have Commissioner Duncan that has comment or question.
oh,
We're really, I guess, still questions. We haven't asked if there's any speakers too. We have to do that.
I would point out, so I have to put this into a question, and I know the answer to the question, but I think this ought to be just on the record. I know, obviously, if you look to 18A or our bylaws, it's greatly focused on landmarks, and then as a secondary aspect of places of historic narrative. But you do have under project comments, which is in our bylaws, it's actually article number 9. The commission may submit comments and draft correspondence relating to the impacts on historic resources and proposed projects in the county. So it's obviously envisioned that we do this function, which we have historically done. So I just wanted to make sure this was called to staff's attention, and although they may think it's in a short-sighted manner, a quick way to move things along with fewer complaints from applicants. In the long run, we may have this loop we just saw.
Yeah,
We just saw this with Rancho San Carlos and with the Moody Sisters,
right.
simply because things didn't, we weren't provided the opportunity to make comments that could have been useful in the planning process.
The Travis does quote that sentence in his letter, which you'll get.
Let's see, Commissioner Witosh.
So I have another little teensy question on semantics and what this means. So the Historic Landmarks Advisory Committee is an advisory.
We are a commission.
Commission, advisory. I'm interested in this word advisory. Because Mr. Nye said that staff has determined that because we're an advisory commission, that they don't need to really send us reports. I think that is a misinterpretation of what advisory means. We are advisory to the Board of Supervisors. We are not an executive commission or a board. We're an advisory board. I don't think that has anything to do with whether the staff decides to send us reports or not. It's unrelated. That would be an Ann Ryerson question. What is advisory?
Commissioner Malcolm, you had a question?
yes, more like an observation now, because things evolve over time, and we revisited the bylaws years ago. I don't know like how often bylaws can or should be revisited to update them. However, we're finding now, because everyone's nitpicking at the law, what does the law say? Specifically with our bylaws, like, okay, well, it didn't say that, so yeah, we can't, but we meant that, but it should be in there, but we didn't think of it at the time when we did it. So like, now that we're thinking about this, we're revisiting the bylaws more and more to look at them, to refer to them. And now other entities are looking at them, well, you don't have that authority or jurisdiction, so we're not gonna deal, we need to revisit the bylaws if we can, to put more specific things in there, because situations have evolved in the past 20 years or so. since we did it. So that'd be my suggestion to really think about our bylaws and, hey, what should be in there now for modern times, this decade even.
I see your name on there. You were on the last revision of the bylaws.
I remember going through, yeah.
Yeah, Commissioner Malcolm is our historian for HVAC.
I believe, Ms. Ryerson was about to make a
Yeah,
response.
this is the advisory question.
Yeah. Well, I think I would just read from chapter 18A, section 18A2, says the Historic Landmarks Advisory Commission is hereby authorized and directed to receive and act upon or initiate applications to investigate and designate places, sites, buildings, structures, works of art, and other objects within the unincorporated territory of the counties having historic, aesthetic, or other special character or interest, et cetera. So I guess I wouldn't put too much weight on advisory, that term, because you do, you do act as an advisory commission and providing comments, for example, but there also are actions that you take where you actually do designate. That's not, you designate for a certain period of time, then the board of supervisors makes a decision whether to continue that. So there are some, it's kind of a blend, I would say, of decision-making and providing advice.
So how would staff arrive at the position where they say, we're going to change this policy? And now we're not going to send reports to the commission unless they specifically ask for them. So then we have to make it our job to know what's going on in the traffic. We have to be, what do you call it, hall monitors. We have to watch and watch, and then, we'll see this one, but not the rest. So it used to be that staff would automatically refer these to us if they were 50 years or older. And reports would come with a historic report automatically. So I'm just curious about the reasoning behind the policy change. I mean, I understand that the pressure is to cut everything out as much as possible for the benefit of the applicant, streamlining, everything is streamlining now. But I don't understand how that changes. I mean, certainly, once we get the report, we can streamline our review, but how cutting out the heart of the material actually is streamlining.
You'll have to ask that type of question to planning when I come in.
But who would have made that decision? At what level would that policy change have been made? If it isn't Travis, it would be his boss. If it isn't his boss, it's that boss. What's going on?
Have the answer.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just as was mentioned earlier, he says, you know, this is not new. We're just reading the bylaws on how projects come to us. So, you know, they were I wanted the agenda items about the new policy, and I was jumped on by saying the word new, and they said this is not nothing new. It's just reading the bylaws and interpreting them the way they always should have been. And they were doing it not by the bylaws, is how they said it to me. But anyway, I think we need to, first of all, there's no public comment. We went over that.
Yeah.
Okay, and we should wrap this up. I guess we need to do commissioner comments, but you know, I'm working on having them come with a presentation that we can ask a lot of these questions to them and get direct answers or wherever. But any comments before we move on? Any comments more on this, Commissioner Malcolm?
Well, I guess for Ann, like, how often do we revisit bylaws or other commissions revisit bylaws to update them? Or is it a thing?
I'm not aware of a standard, but they certainly could be looked at again.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
just in response to that, we should be aware that there's two different documents we gotta look at. Chapter 18A, which is the ordinance which actually establishes us and has the overall, gives us our overall power. And then the bylaws are more internal in as much as they govern our behavior. And it's a lot bigger deal to change chapter 18A than it is to change our bylaws, although I suspect that would still require the Board of Supervisors approval. Staff, I'm sure, is looking at both those things. And if they're not seeing the process that has historically been adhered to within 18A, then having it in our bylaws may not be enough for them to think it's what needs to be done. And basically, they're just looking at a flow chart going through where projects go to and trying to shorten that process from the entry to the end. And we look like an easy part to cut off. Okay. So I would say that we're going to have to argue for the benefits of what has historically been done. And that they're simplifying in a way where they don't recognize all the things that will be lost.
Commissioner.
Yeah, I guess on the point of Lansing, just it's basically by function, like what's the best functioning? I guess if it's not in the bylaws or chapter 18A, it is somewhere and it evolved over time that, hey, that's why we have review. It's the function of it, not necessarily the letter of what's written in the past, you know, because things have evolved.
Well, it sounds like, you know, we need to question them when they do make their presentation and try to continue to explain to them the benefits of coming through us and the benefits that we really don't slow down projects, at least this is my personal opinion. And we've always tried to accommodate the applicant to get it as quickly to the next stage, if it's MBAR or planning commissioner or whatever, you know, that we're not here. I understand there's probably a cost, there's a cost effect because they have to pay for the historian to be here and there is, you know, there is cost for the applicants to come to us. And so I know that is a factor too, but we always, I think, at least since I've been here, which hasn't been as long as some of you, that I feel we try to get these projects through really quickly as possible. I mean, it might be a 4-hour, 5-hour meeting, but we try to get our comments in so that it goes to the next stage. So, okay, so they are planning to come to us with a presentation. I would just ask all commissioners to please think about these thoughts and get them in questions. Put them aside when you think about it, if you're doing something, and then put it aside. So when they do come, we can really ask these very critical questions because as Commissioner Nye said, our function of what we've been doing would be totally different if their projects aren't coming to us. Okay, let's quickly move on because it is running late here. We have to go back for items 6 and 7. So we will move back to item 6, which is the HLAC budget. Did we get new copies, Jonathan?
I wasn't able to put it in the packets that went out.
Okay.
I have it up on the floor.
Okay.
Get money.
And as you remember, the new budget started July 1st, so at the very beginning of the fiscal year. And the cost for that we had done for Chris Irvin would not be in here yet, I don't believe. Where is it?
I believe he's not really that initial.
Did he? Okay, he got the like the deposit or whatever.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
one thing I would just point out, since it's P&D staff support that we're running into trouble with, well, you can see we have almost $700 from just one hearing. So if you multiply that times 12, there's our over.
Yes, I had a talk with Mr. Villalobos, and I have the name of his supervisor, which I'm going to contact when they start next year's planning for budget to try to do it sooner, to bring up our problem for the new commissioner. What's we noticed is staff planning and planning development staff support line item has not gone up since at least 2011. And we know everyone has had salary increases. And we actually have one less, we used to have a planner with us and there we don't have a planner. So it's a very unrealistic looking budget because they haven't increased for the cost of living in there, in that line. So I'm gonna have discussion with them with that. But what has happened is, again, this is for your benefit, is last year we had a lot of extra money in our, was it professional services? That we use for doing different things like making plaques for historic landmarks. And we had all this money left over, but since the planning development staff support was over, we could not access that money. And this is actually a segue. We're in the very early part of the budget. But the idea is we have that money now. We might think about, well, if we have any projects we want to spend, now would be the time because the planning and staff support line item is going to go way over. So we're under now. Even with Chris Irvin's out there, but that's maybe a next month's discussion on that. But I mean, if we want to spend some of that money, we should do it early in the fiscal year and not wait till the end because they're now not letting us spend that money if the other is over. Any questions on this budget?
Would an educational program that we previously discussed earlier, would that be a program that would cost money that we might want to consider? Teaching staff?
Well, we hope we can ask them if it goes out of their budget, not our budget.
Oh, good point.
I mean, every time, like, okay, just for instance, now today, our meeting is going longer than normal. Normally we figure a 2-hour meeting. I mean, and every time we go over, the cost for the planning development line item is going to go up. So, the whole idea is trying to have our meetings very efficient. Of course, if we skip a meeting, that's money saved. If we don't have a meeting a month. But it's a shame that we have to, we never used to think this side. We never used to think the money side of running an HLAC. But what happened last year when we couldn't spend our professional services because the staff line is high, we're a little more aware now. Hopefully, planning in the future, I have a feeling we're not the only commission that this is happening to. I'm sure they just plot this amount of money, they divide it up and boom, and they don't realize what we figured out, that the staff support, salaries go up over time. So anyway, that's the budget for, if you have any comments on this budget, like I say, it's the very beginning. Oh, the one thing I wanted to mention, submitting for travel expenses, like today, if you drove up, your mileage is reimbursed. We used to wait for the whole year to do that. As you know now, we're asking for quarterly. So keep a record of meetings, but the end of September will be the first quarter of this fiscal year. So after next month's meeting at the end of the month, if you do not have one of those mileage forms and how to do it, contact Jonathan, he can send it to you. But we should be submitting the first quarter at the early part of October, your mileage for the meetings, or if there's a site visit or whatever. We
For
want to
the
do.
previous year or previous quarter?
This first quarter. So for July, August, September, if you have parking expenses for July, travel for today, the August meeting, and then for the September meeting, which will be at Montecito, all of that is in our budget for you to be reimbursed. So there's a form you fill out and, but we need to do it, not wait till the end of the year, do it for October. Yes. Yeah.
Maybe just have him send it to.
He can resend, Jonathan, just resend the forms to everybody.
Yeah, I'll email out everybody the updated form and, yeah.
And the mileage is easy, you guys, just do a Google Maps thing and it calculates exactly where you live, where you drove, and it will give you the exact amount. And that's really what the county wants. They don't want you to just look at your odometer and write it down.
Yes, whatever Google Maps.
Yeah,
is.
whatever Google Maps is what they want.
Have you take a photo of that or?
No, you can just attach it in the email
Just print it out.
or print it out and you can turn it in with that.
They can verify it on Google.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the budget. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, thank you. Last item is district reports. Do we have any district reports today? No district reports, okay. So I'm gonna adjourn the meeting, and our next meeting is September 11th, 2023. And it will be at the Montecito Libraries Hall.
Okay.
They call it, well, it's the library, it's a room, is it behind them? Yeah.
That's a word.
And, yeah, so we'll be there at 10 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Good idea. Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
I'd like to
Sorry about that.
Oh, I have it.